We're here today with Dan Wolff, Tickman Dan, as he is known, to talk about different testing services for ticks. So, when you get a tick, the first thing you want to do is remove it, and Dan's got a tool for that, and he's an expert on that. And I think, checking for ticks is a big deal. You have an excellent video on checking for ticks, so I think we'll either include it below in this post or make it available to people that want to check it out on your site. You've also got a lot of good material on your YouTube channel, so people can find that. TickEase is your product, so at tickease.com, TICKEASE.com, they can go and find more about that. So what I wanted to ask you about today is the testing services that are out there, because they seem to be proliferating, and a lot of them are sort of more academically oriented. But I wanted to get your take on that. I know you've worked with some testing services yourself, and you even have a kit now, is that right, that's designed to facilitate getting those ticks off and sending them in for testing. So maybe we could talk about that at the end.
Happy to do that.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I mean, you remove this tick, and I actually read something on the internet, and it said, how do I kill ticks instantly on my dog? And the answer was that you could either A, put it in rubbing alcohol, or B, douse it in classic amber Listerine. And that just, obviously, I don't know how they arrived at the classic amber Listerine. Like, apparently other types of Listerine wouldn't work, and then certainly other brands wouldn't do the job. But really, rather than dousing it in some chemical that's going to kill it, there's something better to do, which is to send it for testing. So how would I go about that, and why would I want to do that?
Right. Well, first of all, thanks, Mark. It's good to be here as always. Really appreciate what Insect Shield has done and continues to do with helping people prevent illness with your apparel. So yeah, testing is an interesting thing. So you can't get to the testing until you have a tick to submit. So the first thing you want to do, again, you want to make sure that you locate ticks on your body by doing thorough tick checks. And if you're in endemic areas, and basically when the activities kind of peak and valley during the year, you might be able to get a better assessment of yourself and find more ticks. Like right now, spring activity is very high. We still have leftover adults from last year. We're transitioning into nymphal stage ticks, which are the tiny ones this year. We'll reach a lull in midsummer, and then it'll peak again in the fall when the newly transitioned adults begin to appear. But that doesn't mean let your guard down. The important thing is to check every day if you're outside in a tick endemic area. And, the video that you're referring to kind of goes through everything, where it's for yourself, your family members, your kids, and your pets. And that can be found on the YouTube channel if you search TickEase. And if you like the stuff, please subscribe. But there's a lot of graphic demonstrations of tick removals and a very informative how to do tick checks for those exposed.
Right.
So, you can't get a tick tested unless you have it. So you have to know how to remove it. And the best thing to do is always keep in mind, you want to do prompt and proper removal. There's a lot of gadgets out there that'll be calling themselves tick removers. I have personally been bitten about 220 times by deer ticks. I've also had the opportunity to remove more than 3,000 live ticks. Wow. So that was kind of how I came up with the idea that, hey, let's just invent a tick tool that works and is not complicated, no frills and all that stuff.
Right.
I did come up with a design which has a very, very sharp tweezer on one side for smaller ticks, and it has a scoop, which is perfect for removing larger ticks, particularly on animals. But perfect. You brought up the point where people are asking about, how do I kill ticks instantly? And my first question is, well, why? Why do you want to know that?
Sure. You don't actually want to.
Why do you want to kill the tick?
Would you smash it, or it's not necessary, right?
I mean,
Well, I mean, if you want to send it in though to a testing service, what do you do with it first? One
right.
guy that I saw said he puts them in the freezer. He puts them in a bag and puts them in the freezer. But you do want to preserve it, right? Because what are you gonna do with it? You're gonna take a picture of it or put it in a bag and send it by mail. So the different options, right? You got to find a service.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How would you
Well,
find one of these services?
the important thing, first and foremost, is to decide whether or not it warrants sending in for testing.
Hmm.
And that's something that the consumer, the victim, has to decide for themselves. We can't really give you that, that decision. So it's important. Again, I've mentioned this in other talks that we've had, to identify that tick, because I know a dog tick in Massachusetts, for example, is not going to be as dangerous as a deer tick of this, an adult stage deer tick. So you have to decide whether or not you want to submit the tick. So there was a website at tickencounter.org under tick spotters that will give you a free identification.
Yeah.
So once you get the identification, they might even make a recommendation. Hey, this is an adult deer tick that's been feeding on you for more than a day. It's likely it's carrying some sort of pathogens. You may want to consider getting it tested. Okay, so at that point, you want to say, okay, well, where do I go to get it tested? Well, check with your state.
Just to ask there, how are you getting that tick? Is it a photo that you take of it and send to Tick Encounter?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And they're pretty good unless the tick is like totally destroyed or mashed up or in small little pieces. They
Yeah.
can give you a good ID on it.
Right.
They'll tell you if they can.
Right.
So what you said, we were talking about, why do you want to kill the tick? The tick, first of all, ticks don't survive too long outside of their regular habitats, which is under the leaf litter in moist environments.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put it in a Ziploc bag, in a day or so, it's dead anyway.
Okay.
You don't have to freeze it.
You don't have to freeze it.
No, and some substances. I mean, I'm thinking about your Listerine comment, and I think that the reason that good old amber Listerine might work is because it has 25% alcohol in it.
Right.
Some of the other mouthwashes and Listerines are alcohol free now.
Yeah.
And we all know that ticks can survive, days underwater. So, I mean, unless it's a personal vendetta against your tick and you want it
Some
dead,
people may be quite upset at the tick.
yeah, I would say just leave it. It's going to die probably a more torturous and slow death if you just let it desiccate or dry out.
Right. If you're giving it alcohol, I mean, that might be pleasant for the tick, actually.
Have a couple of cocktails and pass out. I mean, they didn't feel anything, but a slow, painful death in a baggie is probably for them. So keep that in mind. So it's not necessary to kill that tick, intentionally or forcefully right off the bat. Right. It will die on its own, so you don't have to freeze it. You don't have to do anything like that. As long as the tick, you have some portion of that tick, particularly the abdomen, or even if it's in pieces, they can test it. Because it's a PCR test and it's a DNA-based test, so any part of that tick will suffice. And if
what
they
is PCR?
It's a polymer chain reactive test.
Okay.
So it is actually highly accurate. The only variables come from how the specimens are handled and how that assay is, presented. But if done correctly, it's very, very accurate.
Okay. Unlike
the diagnostics we have for humans, the tick testing is pretty good if you have a good, solid laboratory that's had some experience in that.
Is Tick Encounter going to do this for somebody? No. Or, okay, so you send it to Tick Encounter, you take a picture, send it to them, it's free. Right. And they're going to tell you, I read some of their stuff and it sounds like they're quite accurate. I mean, they don't miss very often in terms of picking the type of tick. That's correct. If they have enough to look at, they'll be able to ID it pretty much 100% of the time. Okay. And then they can make recommendations like, as I said, where based on your geographics, the stage of the tick, how long it was feeding, and those bits of information are all compiled to give you an assessment. Okay. A nymphal stage dog tick feeding for 2 hours in Massachusetts, it might be considered low risk.
fully adult grown, deer tick in Massachusetts feeding for 12 hours or 24 hours, high risk. And what are your options? Well, you can take some prophylactic antibiotics. You can talk to your doctor. You can send the tick in for testing. So I've had a lot of people this spring. It seems like it's been a very active year so far, more so than in the past few years. People have called me up, and I had 3 people yesterday with encounters that needed some advice. So I was able to help out and even facilitate testing for one of my wife's friends over the weekend, and she just got her results back. And unfortunately, that adult deer tick that we pulled off did test positive for Lyme and for anaplasmosis, which are both bacterial infections that can be difficult to deal with, based on how their bodies might react to it, because everybody's different. So, generally speaking, there are many different labs that will perform these types of tick tests now, and it seems to be increasing. There are university-based programs. There are public health-based laboratories. There are for-profit labs. It all depends on what you feel comfortable with. And some of these state labs and state departments of health might actually have subsidized or free programs. So before you go and spend your money, you might want to check and see if you qualify for a discounted or a free program. I prefer, and over the past 5 or 6 years, a laboratory that was originally based out of the University of Massachusetts called tickreport.com. And it is a fee-based program. They have had subsidized programs from the state of Massachusetts on occasion, but right now it is a non-subsidized laboratory. And when I say that, there are different levels of services that you can get. The more types of infectious agents you want to identify, the higher the cost. But the basic standard testing, which I think is adequate for Massachusetts and Northeast residents, you can send these ticks in from anywhere, is $50. And that's pretty good. It's pretty reasonable, I think. And if you use promo code TICKEASE, TICKEASE, I can save you an additional $5. So that's important as well. Every little bit helps. But they are so accurate, and I really like the fact that they guarantee a 72-hour turnaround when they receive the tick. So that's my preferred group. There's another group here that's a for-profit.
What's the name again of your preferred?
Tickreport.com.
Okay.
And they are now have branched off on their own because of the restrictive nature of the university, which I guess furloughed their employees twice during the pandemic. And, it was difficult for them to operate under that umbrella. So I'm going to continue to use them. The laboratory director is a friend of mine, and he's we met through the whole tick process. So it's good. And if you have any questions, or anybody has any questions, they can certainly reach out to my website. I actually, in my product, have a tick testing instructions that will show you how to submit that tick for testing.
Oh, right. So that comes in your Tickies product as well. Because I wanted to ask you, you've been working on a tick kit.
Yeah.
Right. Which I don't know if you have that handy, but that is something that is interesting. There's more to it than just instructions, right? It comes with.
It comes. It helps people who ask the question once they have find a tick on someone. What do I do now?
Right.
And I will help them step by step through the process of what to do now.
Okay.
And I am actually putting my deposit down to my factory today on my initial order, and this has been in the works for like 5 years now. I've been putting this together, but this is a premium kit. Keep that in mind. The difference is that it actually would be practical, functional, and long-lasting, waterproof in a hard case that you can keep around for a long time. And it will have access to health risk assessment at Tick Encounter. It'll have instructions on tick testing. It'll have the tickies remover, magnifier, alcohol pads, antibiotic, and all that good stuff in it. So it's something good to have around.
Who is that geared toward
This is
specifically?
good
Is that
for more humans than animals.
okay? Because the dogs can't like order that online, right? They're not going to be able to get the tick
No,
kit.
their paws are. It's hard for them to touch.
It's maybe they have the voice recognition thing,
But
but yeah. So that sounds very interesting too. Where would people look for more info on that? Is that going to be up on your website?
we will be doing announcements to all of our resellers and on
Okay.
our website, and it will be listed on. We'll do some videos on YouTube. Plus, we'll have it on Walmart.com and
Yeah.
Amazon.
Well, it seems like that whole thing. I mean, maybe some of the Lyme organizations have their preferred providers for tick analysis. I haven't looked into that, but this is kind of a growing area of interest, and obviously Lyme, awareness is a big deal. Um, so hopefully, the Insect Shield has the protection angle covered, and I think we do a pretty good job in terms of our clothing. I'm still surprised to find lists of how to prevent ticks that don't include pre-treated clothing, because it seems so obvious that pre-treated socks and pants, tuck those into the socks. I mean, why would you not want to do that? And it's not that expensive. So
Great. I recommend that highly. Hands
yeah,
down, the
yeah,
best prevention against ticks
right,
that I know.
right. Well, it's always a pleasure, Dan. I love talking with you about ticks. I think the first interview that we did, we wound up with about 50 minutes of discussion, and I was instructed to cut that back a little bit for subsequent interviews. But fortunately, there's plenty to talk about. We'll look forward to having you back again.
Okay, I
All
will
right.
be ready anytime you are, and we want everybody, of course, to take care of themselves.
Thank you.
Get
Yes.
every tick checks. Don't
All right.
neglect the crevices, and use the Tickies product and
Sure.
take it all off.
Right. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Okay, thank you.